This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
Just when you thought, maybe something will change. Maybe this time around we'll get an accurate medical examiner's report in the death of Ellen Greenberg. And then you realize the city of Philadelphia was in charge. Oh, well, that worked out well. We are looking now at the new medical examiner's report on the death of Ellen Greenberg. It has been released. A report that 14 years somehow manages to say everything and explain nothing. Dr. Lindsay Simon, the chief medical examiner for Philadelphia, has now reaffirmed the ruling of suicide.
Shut up. Just shut up. Just shut up. I'm leaving. I don't want to be part of this.
True story. It happened.
How the F is this even possible? Oh, I'm outraged again. Here I go.
They've reaffirmed it even after more than 20 stab wounds. Well, actually, they've upped the stab wounds this time, 23.
Shut up again.
So let's continue to work against ourselves. Conflicting evidence, years of public outrage. But here's the catch. This so-called independent review, it wasn't independent at all. It came from the same office that ruled it a suicide in the first place.
Then
the same office now being sued by Ellen's family. And somehow it conveniently clears itself of any wrongdoing. So, we're asking the tough questions, the legal questions, the ones the city doesn't seem eager to answer. Bob Motta, host of Defense Diaries, here to break it down, what this report really means, how the system protects itself, and whether justice for Ellen Greenberg just got buried again. We were texting yesterday afternoon when we heard it came out. I'm like, who has it? Do you have it? I have it. Do you? Like, who could find it first?
Yeah,
find the review.
Won. Tony won for the record. Tony got it first within minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
Tony's good.
it.
He can find anything. So
the guy's a fucking digger, man. You know,
you had a chance to dig into this thing yesterday. You got, obviously, you're of the legal mindset. I'm of the host podcast mindset. So you have a little more insight into these sort of things. Bob, what just overall, when you saw this thing and you first had a chance to sink your teeth into it, what was your reaction?
My initial reaction, having in my lawyer career prior to becoming a podcaster myself, I had looked at many autopsy reports, and one of the things I'm always saying on my show that I think that people, it kind of like goes over their head a little bit, not to speak to their intelligence level at all, but just kind of their experience in doing this kind of shit, is that anytime you have an autopsy in what could be a crime scene, the cops are there, all right? And the cops are there feeding information to the medical examiner, okay, in terms of factual evidence that they found at the scene. But with that comes their tunnel vision if they've formed it.
Yeah.
So if whatever they've landed on in terms of cause of death or how this might have gone down or potential perpetrator, they're coming into the ME's office with it. So when I read this one, the first thing I thought is, God damn, this reads like a police report more than a medical examiner's report. It does. It is so heavy, fact-laden in terms of what the cops construe what happened that you can't not see that. Like, there's more kind of police report information in here than there is actual medical findings, in my estimation. I mean, it's lengthy. It's 32 pages long. And there is the entire theory of the police department in here, in terms of what happened. And they're stuck on this suicide finding. Why? We could have hours of conversation on. I don't get it, man. And before this came out, I watched the most recent I think it was Hulu. It's one of the big streamers.
Death in Apartment.
Yeah. 623 or whatever it is.
Yep.
You know, and I walked away with the same feeling, like this doesn't feel at all like a suicide.
No.
You know, and that was I thought that was pretty even-handed in terms of, you know, Ellen was having some mental health issues. There's no question about that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, but just the way this thing went down, and once again, we have an awful police investigation. That always seems to be the running theme of these cases, where we're all outraged on one side or another because there's just so many gaping holes in the police investigation. And this is a prime example of that. I mean, the fact that they not only allowed for, but advised the apartment manager to hire a fucking professional crime scene cleaning company come in and scour that fucking place is like beyond me.
Who says that? I mean, like, how often is that? You know, I mean, obviously, people don't maybe realize this, but after the scene is done, it's up to you to clean up your space. The police don't do that for you.
Right.
So there usually is a point in time to which they may, we know these guys, they do this, but the time and place is important. It's not usually while the body is still on the ground.
Yeah. Or hasn't been autopsied.
Or autopsy. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like, literally still the active scene, but they never looked at it. And this is what just gets me from the get-go. How on earth would you not look at this thing as a crime scene from the beginning? They solely seem to base this only on the fiance saying the door was locked from the inside. Oh, well, can't be a crime.
Right. And the misinformation that they get from the fiance regarding the doorman walking him up back to the apartment. Yeah. And you know, which
because
didn't
God
happen.
knows it's never the other person in the relationship.
Exactly. You know, so it's confounding, really. And it's, you know, I mean, obviously for the Greenberg family, I feel terrible. You know, they've been going through it forever on this thing, man, fighting and fighting and fighting for justice for their daughter and what they construe to be justice. And it's really, really sad. Because, I mean, here's the bottom line, man. Like, no matter which way they come down on this ME's report, the evidence that was lost is lost. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So you'll never be able to get that evidence in your own. Like, I would think if there was an honest, you know, true blue prosecutor, white hat wearing prosecutor that was like, look, I've looked at this thing, man, and I've come down on the side of this is not a suicide. You know, that they could probably get another independent, truly independent autopsy done. You know, the problem is with this thing, Tony, they're not even looking at the body anymore.
No.
Well, but here's Bob, here's what gets me. Yes, they lost a lot of evidence. They didn't. This was a really botched crime scene.
They didn't collect evidence. They didn't treat it as a crime scene.
Right, exactly. But what they did have, and what they do have, are descriptions of her stab wounds in places that she cannot physically reach. I mean, I feel like CSI Miami or something, Philadelphia, needs to come in here and do an actual episode on this. I don't know how much more we have to do on this, really. It's absurd. There's no way this woman did this to herself.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the evidence.
I think if we were to like use AI to look up what is the average of women that commit suicide, do it by ultimately stabbing themselves in the heart.
Siobhan talked about that. Our psychotherapist, she said hardly any.
Right. No one does it like that. It's a wrist split. No, women don't do it like that. You know, I mean, that is a brutal way to kill yourself. And, you know, I mean, most women are going to pop pills. You know, maybe they'll do the gas in the car thing, you know, but to do it this way is just bizarre, man.
And Todd's got the pictures up of basically a skeleton of, you know, where
this is the area. This is the chart that shows where the stab wounds were, how deep they were. There's no way.
The trajectory, a big long, is that a steak knife?
It looks like a steak
And-
knife, which is
okay.
probably about a 5-inch blade.
Yeah,
right?
there's no way she could have gotten back so far behind her head to insert that at the base of her skull properly.
How deep did N go in? Do we know?
It hit the spinal cord, and that's the cut that everyone has been arguing and saying you couldn't have continued after that because you would have been incapacitated.
Correct.
But this is a new addition to the report that came out just the other day. They're saying, well, that might have been the original autopsy. Maybe they dug a little too deep, basically. Maybe they might have accidentally severed a little bit more than they intended to when they were doing the examination. Wow. That's the excuse. That's the excuse.
So they're inept is what they're saying.
Basically.
mean, that's what I'm saying. When you go in initially and they're performing the initial autopsy and you've got a cop or two in there and they're sitting there saying, well, like they're giving the ME the information that they had the door bar lock thing on, the thing that swings over, and that they had that the boyfriend was escorted up by the guy downstairs, the doorman. And, in their mind, this thing's open and shut. There could have been in their mind, there's no one else that could have been in that apartment. There's no way that he would have done this beforehand. And it's
simply based on one person's account. Insane. It's insane. It's like saying, well, Brian Koberger says he was stargazing. Couldn't have been him.
Okay, case over. We're good.
All right. Well, I'm glad
Everybody
we're going
go
to work. Can we handle all cases like that going forward in Philadelphia? If somebody just says, well, nope, you're wrong. I wasn't there. Oh, well, I'm glad you cleared that up.
Right.
That's how this is handled.
The reality is that's almost how all of them are handled. You know what I mean? Which always leads me to the question in this particular case, because you have some suspicious behavior from the fiance's family, not necessarily him at the time, but we can obviously get into the discussion about the 911 call, which is strange to say the least. But, the fact that they got the uncle coming back to the apartment and taking all of the fucking electronics is a big issue, especially in a time when we glean so much from people's devices. It's very suspicious. Do
you think an attorney might know that those are very important objects that might have very important information on them, and if they were in the hands of someone that shouldn't be seeing them or they don't want to see them, could look rather incriminating? And he was there under the guise of, I need to get some stuff for the funeral. Okay, that's usually like artifacts of their stuff. Like, did you go get like her little figurines she liked, a favorite dress? Yep. Some pictures maybe on the wall. Makeup. Yeah, perfume, something. No, you took all of her digital devices, and then what did you show up to the funeral with off those digital devices? Which I'm going to take a wild guess and say you probably didn't have the passwords to, being the uncle that really wasn't very involved with Ellen in any way, shape, or form. But you're the one going in and taking this shit,
right? It's weird, man.
It's plain.
Doesn't this scream of, and I want to say the fiance has not been charged.
No.
Let's throw that out there.
No.
But doesn't this scream of somebody is covering something up somewhere? I mean, this big neon sign going, cover up, cover up. There's no way. I will go to my grave saying that this woman did not off herself. Period.
Yeah.
I think there's two ways of looking at it, though, too. Like, what is the cover up on here? I mean, is this, because there's ways you could look at this. Is it a cover up in terms of the law enforcement realizing, wow, we really dropped the ball, and just saying, it was a snowstorm and we were short staffed? That's probably not going to hold up very well long term. But that is why we were shitty at this to begin with. But that's not going to look good, so we're going to get sued, so we're just going to keep going down this path. Is it all to cover up incompetence? Is it to cover up a murder, I mean, that they know who committed it and it's a favor for someone there at the scene, that's easy to go to. It seems to make the best movie of the week, although we don't know at the end of the day. There's a lot of weird, suspicious behavior, but that, again, there can be weird, suspicious behavior, and that's just how it looks. We've never had a way to parse all this out in any sort of trial form or investigation form. And at the same point, too, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here for the Sam, is if you had nothing to do with this, let's just, because that's how it says right now. That's right. How the world is. Yep. It said he had absolutely nothing to do with this. If you had absolutely nothing to do with this and the investigators are not looking at you, I'm not going to raise my fucking hand.
Right.
And be like, dig into me more. Because how many people get wrongfully convicted when they didn't have anything to do with it? And you may be sitting there going, this evidence looks really bad. Like, I would easily be the person that they're going to say did this, even though I didn't. And they seem to like not be looking at me. So let them go and fuck up over here. And I'm just going to go over this way and be quiet and continue on with my life, which he did.
Yeah.
And he may be 1,000% innocent and because he's never been charged. And that may just been a complete struck of dumb luck for him that when it comes to discussing this and parsing this out does look rather odd. But at the same point, if you're looking at it from that perspective, makes total complete sense.
Right.
But the only other part you would say is, I do want to find who killed my fiance if she was murdered. But at the same point, you may be also telling yourself, I don't think my fiance would want me to spend the rest of my life in prison for a murder I didn't commit.
Right.
Because that's the way that these cards are going to fall if I do raise my hand and go down that road. It could be a very calculated, very smart move. And if you're the attorney, if you're the uncle attorney taking the shit and they're allowed to do it, was that, do you think, more of just an opportunity on the part of the Goldberg family, of Sam and his uncle, where they're releasing the crime scene. And the uncle's like, let's get in there and get this shit out. I don't care what's on it, but let's just get it out.
We're not going to get anything out there that's going to be misconstrued, so let's go fucking grab it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
they weren't breaking the law doing anything.
No, they weren't. I mean,
that's the thing.
Crime scene was cleared. Like, the crime scene, by the time they went in, it had already been cleaned. You know,
were they just playing what made the most sense?
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, to be honest with you, I'd be doing the same fucking thing. You know, as Sam and his family had done. I mean, if they're like, all right, they talked to me. You know, I gave them everything that I had in terms of what I knew, and they cleared the crime scene. And at that point, I had a conversation with my family, and my family was of the mindset, look, because the way that this shakes down, the reality is it's either Sam or it's nobody else, because the one thing that they'll have is the video from the apartment. If there was some strange person that walked in, I've never heard anything about any other potential suspects. And granted, they've never done that investigation wherein they've dug into all the video, I'm assuming. But, in the minds of law enforcement, you'd have to know that it's either going to be me or no one if you're Sam, right? There's not going to be this nefarious lurking person that just sneaks into the building basically because there's that doorman there,
right.
And there are 11 cameras in the building, even though sadly there's none in the hallway. It's like those little things all kind of lead up to, I can see why they did what they did in order to protect Sam, and that it was probably the smart move, and there was nothing at the time untoward of it. But when you look back on it, when you have the Greenberg family saying, okay, this is fucking bullshit, my daughter didn't kill herself, and they're fighting and fighting and fighting, and then you look back at everything in retrospect, that's when things start to seem hinky, but it's like you said, man, is there a world in which he didn't do this? Yeah. I mean, obviously there has to be. I have to sit here with intellectual honesty and say, okay, well, I'm not a medical examiner. I know that the thought of the way that she died with the injuries she sustained are implausible, but are they truly impossible? I mean, I could take my my arm and
they're doable.
They're doable.
Like,
you know
so
what
to
I'm
say
saying?
they're physically impossible
yeah, but I don't
is
know that
not
they're
true.
doable with 23 stab wounds. I could see maybe 1 or 2.
Here's the reality of a lot of the stab wounds. Some of them are superficial.
Correct.
Some of them don't go very deep. Some certainly do. And then you get to the ones that are incapacitating, and then you get to new territory. But if we're to go by sheer, they're not all 23 are incapacitating stab wounds. Some are more like, I could stab myself with this pen and go deeper. Yeah. So you do have some of that, but there are significant ones here that again, and then just the utter odds of this being that she did this to herself, which we talked about earlier, are insane.
Well, and the coagulated blood that accumulated at one of the sites too, that looked like it had to be post-mortem. How is this possible? How is this possible? I want somebody with a medical degree to walk me through this.
Right. And so let me ask you guys, what did you have, a psychologist or a psychiatrist on to talk about it?
Yeah, Siobhan was on. Yeah.
Our psychotherapist.
So when you ask Siobhan, so when Ellen goes in her first appointment on 1/12/2011, and she describes this anxiety that she's got going on for a couple of months, I mean, to me, is anxiety the type of thing that kind of drives you towards suicide?
She filled up her gas tank that morning.
Right.
Or people who are going to I'm sorry, off themselves. I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. Unalive. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, I knew it was one of the words I'm not used to using. Yeah. We don't go in thinking, I'm going to need gas in my car, especially if it's going to snow. I need to have a full tank. Right. We don't think like that.
Right.
That's not how you're thinking. You're not planning ahead. You are planning the end. People who are planning on ending their lives do not fill up their gas tanks.
But a lot of, I'll play the counter on that. A lot of times it is a very spur of the moment decision when it happens.
Exactly.
It isn't always I'm planning this out for months and today's the day. It's like, I'm doing this now and boom. But she was
a very meticulous person, though. She was a planner. Everything she did was planning. This seems like such a weird twist of events for this woman who was so meticulous.
If she picked up a gun and did it, it would be questionable. But the method is what makes this insane.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that I think just drives everybody nuts about this case, is the method in which she did it, because it's so unusual. It's just it's not how women are typically going to unalive themselves. And here,
anyone.
I mean, but especially a woman.
Especially a woman. Yes, we don't choose that route. Somebody brought up a point that she was making a fruit salad. I think that's an important feature as well.
It is.
Yeah. It is. Unless that's her last meal, but I can't imagine a fruit salad. It's going to be her last meal. Women are more like French fries, chocolate, and potato chips.
Stacy would pick a meat stick. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I think we're hearing much more about how Stacy would do this and what reality would be, because we're hearing I do a meat stick.
Well, we often, don't we all talk about, my last meal would be, if we were on death row or something. But
death row, not necessarily right before I stab myself to death.
Well, and why is she going to clean the fruit?
Right.
I mean, there's so many things that are lining up here that don't make any sense. If you're going to unalive yourself, why even bother cleaning the fruit? Just eat it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
there are things that simply don't add up. I mean, when you kind of look at it, and again, when you're looking and I don't know if our audience has been able to read through this, and I also realize that when consumers of true crime are kind of sucked into a story, you're typically hearing a side, right? Mm-hmm. And then from that side, who may or may not be biased, people are reaching their own conclusions based on the things that they've heard. So I'd recommend that everybody go out and read this thing for themselves. Everybody's going to come to the same conclusion. This thing really does read like a police report more than an ME's report. It's very, very heavy fact laden. Yes, they have the medical information in there, but in terms of trying to build their case that this was in fact a suicide, that's how the thing reads, man. It's like every single portion that isn't directly related to the findings from the autopsy, but it instead is facts of the case as they were able to glean them from what little investigation they did, is very, very much like, okay, this is why we think it's a suicide, not like a determination by an up and up ME. You know what I mean? It's like there, you cannot look at this thing and be like, okay, somebody wasn't in this ME's ear saying, okay, the goal of this is to convince people that are convinced that Ellen did this or did not do this to herself and that Sam did this. You need to convince them with this report that that's not what happened. You know, I mean, that's how this thing reads. It
Which
really
is like
does.
5 people.
Right. It's like 5 people on the planet, you know, and it's a frustrating, confounding, and upsetting case in a lot of different ways. And, you know, I mean, Ellen's parents have just spent forever, you know, I mean, forever on this thing. We're going on 15 years fighting this, you know, because they want to, they really want to clear their daughter's name in terms of in her reputation. And it's important to them, you know, and obviously if somebody else did this, then they want that person held to account, you know? So, I mean, I get it. I imagine if the same thing had happened to me, the same horrible thing happened to one of my children, it would probably bug the shit out of me every day of my life. You know, I'd probably obsessively think about it, and I'd probably the fight would become the thing in my life. The fight would become, you know, what I wake up for every day, you know, like which it's
become for him. I mean, her dad this is his mission. He talked about that in the doc, which I think is a very interesting doc, one that went fairly scorched earth on the fiance far more than anyone has in the past. I was really kind of surprised just how scorched earth it went. But again, innocent, never been charged, maintains his innocence, and that's Sam.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast. This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Brueski, Stacy Cole, and Todd Michaels.
And the insanity continues on in the case of Ellen Greenberg. More than 14 years after she was found in her Philadelphia apartment, the city has doubled down again on calling it self-inflicted, unaliving by oneself. The word YouTube doesn't like, you know what I'm talking about. The latest 2025 review by Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Lindsay Simon was supposed to bring clarity. It was part of the settlement from the agreement that her family had with the state that they'd re-examine this and, I don't know, maybe actually do their job this time. Instead, it's raised even more questions. The original pathologist has now recanted, saying the ruling was wrong. It didn't influence the new medical examiner at all. The family says they've been shut out of the promised re-examination, and the public is asking how more than 20. They've added more to it. 23, I believe we're at now. Stab wounds, including to the back of the neck, can still be written off as self-inflicted. Today, former prosecutor Eric Faddis joining us, defense attorney, to look at what's left legally, procedurally, and morally. Where we sit right now, that's the big question. Where do the Greenbergs go from here, Eric?
Tony, it seems like the Greenbergs may have exhausted any kind of legal avenue that they can pursue. There's no appellate process for a medical examiner's findings. You typically cannot go to the court and say, hey, we think this person got it wrong. We want some sort of remedy, although that is kind of what happened in earlier proceedings in this case. At any rate, there is just not much legal traction beyond what they've done. They've exhausted all of the traditional avenues that one would expect, and I'm just not sure what other options they might have at this point.
It obviously has been their mission since her passing for reality to meet the report itself. Some say, this is reality. This is science. This is what it is. One of those people, Sam Goldberg, her ex-fiance, who had survived this, obviously. He was the one in the 911 call. He was the one featured, at least he wasn't in it as voluntarily being in it, but they used the 911 call and talked about his story. Sam Goldberg has maintained his innocence through all of this. There's never been any charges against him. And yeah, he's an innocent man. But he's recently made a statement, and I just want to kind of start out here with that. Sam Goldberg's remarks. Only the second time he's ever spoken publicly about Ellen's death. His previous statement sent via email to CNN, this was in fall of 24, reaffirmed his belief that Ellen took her own life and condemned what he described as lies, distortions, and falsehoods spread about him over the years, saying, quote, when Ellen took her own life, it left me bewildered. She was a wonderful and kind person who had everything to live for, he wrote at the time. Despite official claims, Ellen's case continues, obviously, to spark a lot of public outrage. He did make some more comments about this in a brief interview that he just gave, I believe, like yesterday, in terms of our recording. Sam Goldberg admitted the ongoing scrutiny has taken a toll. Allegedly, he said this. Things suck. It's been awful, he said. Quote, referring to the intense media attention surrounding the death of Ellen Greenberg. When asked whether he felt he had been screwed over by the recent Hulu documentary investigating Ellen's final days, Sam Goldberg allegedly replied, yeah, I have been. It's awful and it sucks, but I have nothing else to say. That's what some of the reporting is as of right now. And look, if he did have nothing to do with this, it does suck. It would be horrible to have this following you around your entire adult life if this tragedy, took place and it looks absolutely horrible, but you had nothing to do with it. And as of right now, we don't know that he had anything to do with it. A weird 911 call doesn't mean he did anything. I mean, that's how he reacted to things. And it's not how you or I would necessarily react. Is it how some other folks out there would react? Sure. There's plenty of people who would react strangely to something like that. But strange is in the eye of the beholder. It doesn't mean that someone is necessarily guilty of anything. And I guess that's where I want to begin on some of this. If it weren't, if his tone in the 911 call were not what it is, and we all listen to this thing and we go, that just seems disconnected. It seems weird. It seems aloof. Oh, there's a knife in her chest. Like, how did you not see? I mean, there's a lot of how did you nots when you look at this. But again, none of it means that he actually did something other than find his fiance dead. That's where this all begins. If he had acted differently, if there was, I guess, what we'd want more shock, more. I don't know what one would want in that tape. If it was different than what it is, would there be this much scrutiny around this case?
We like you sort of alluded to, we all have expectations as to how a human might react in this horribly traumatic scenario. And sometimes people act differently than our expectations would hold. And so, but yeah, I think, when you listen to that 911 call, it certainly raised some eyebrows for some. And I think that, when that is paired with a lot of the other curious evidence or non-evidence and developments, and then certainly when that is paired with the medical examiner's report and sort of how there's been some back and forth over the years in terms of whether this was her unaliving herself or something else, it really does start to raise some eyebrows as to what's going on here. And then there were some I guess curious involvement from one of his relatives that was permitted to go to the scene. There are just some things where folks are like, hey, wait a sec, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, there's a lot that just doesn't make sense here. I want to know about the involvement of the family member. The timing of that is what feels so ugly and so wrong, because when you're in a situation like this, you don't necessarily call a family member, you call emergency services. So what was going on? What role does this person have to play in this whole thing?
Yeah, I think that's a big question on everyone's mind. They're trying to get all of these puzzle pieces. Some of them have gone missing over the years. Some of them are no longer really attainable, and that's what happens when you have cold cases that just linger for years and years. And so, yeah, definitely a lot of unanswered questions, really across the board on this.
The thing is, they did nothing illegal. And I think that's important to point out. Yes, I mean, optics don't look great. It is weird that from the evidence that we do have is that there was calls to the family member, the attorney, before to emergency services while he was locked out of the apartment. And then the family member, the attorney, shows up and gets the digital devices out of there. Wanted to get some artifacts for her funeral, allegedly. That's what the story, as far as we understand, is. An uncle who didn't even really know her. There's no reason for him to go in and get digital artifacts to take her digital devices. You would think they would go to her parents, not the uncle of him by marriage. That was an attorney that comes in. But they did everything legally. They didn't there was nothing that was, hey, can we sneak in here and get some of this stuff out of this house while nobody's looking? No, that's not what happened. The police released the scene. They did everything that they legally could do. And I'm playing the devil's advocate on here more and more, because if you're in this sort of situation, and let's say you take whoever did it out of the equation, whether Sam has anything to do with it or not, and as of right now, he doesn't. If you legally can get in and get these things out of here, because you don't know how this is going to be spun, especially if she did do it herself. The media is going to look at the partner as the culprit right away, regardless, no matter what. And the optics of this don't look great. It wouldn't be hard if you're not an idiot, and I don't think Sam is. If you're just looking at this going, shit, this looks really horrible for me. I had nothing to do with this, but this looks horrible. And I don't really have an alibi around it other than I went to the gym. And you can see I wasn't in here, but this looks bad. What options do I have? You're talking to your attorney family. They're like, well, they probably are looking at those things going, is there cell phones? Is there this? Is there that? Let's get rid of those things before anything can be gleaned off of them. Not necessarily criminal to anything you've done, but what could someone glean? What could someone take out of context, change around, manipulate to fit a specific narrative? Because let's be honest, that's what the police are going to usually do in some case. They usually go down a narrative route that they have, and they're going to take pieces of evidence and try and fit the blocks, whether they're square or circle, into the same hole and try and make it fit. So honestly, some of the actions that were taken here, if you have the legal mindset and prowess behind you saying, hey, these are some things you maybe should do to protect yourself right now, he exercised them. He didn't do anything illegal.
But I also feel like if you haven't done anything wrong, why do you need to hide?
Because you can't trust the fucking police.
I hate to think that in
That's
every
the reality.
scenario, though.
How do you not think that? You've been doing this show for how long?
When I worked at the vet clinic for 8 years, I worked with the canine officers. They are some of the most wonderful people I've ever worked with. I would trust them with my life.
The animals were not investigating this. They didn't get Lassie and
handlers.
Frodo. And Lassie and Frodo came in and said, no murder, we're done.
Whatever. No, the handlers. I mean, I don't think every cop is a bad cop.
No, they're not.
I don't want to believe that there's all this conspiracy. So my thing is, and it goes down to, you're sitting on the couch with your partner and they're hiding their phone from you. Well, let me see your phone. If you're not hiding anything, let me see it. Not that I would do that, but I'm just saying, what do you have to hide? Do you not want them to see the text messages that were leading up to this day?
Anything could be read into incorrectly. Eric?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fair points on both sides. And look, I do criminal defense now, former prosecutor, so I've seen both sides. And these were some savvy legal moves. And that's one thing that I, of course, can't object to. You need to protect yourself, especially when you're innocent, especially when you don't want to be wrongly implicated, when you know that sort of those crosshairs from the law enforcement are going to look immediately to the spouse, or the fiance in this case. That is the first place they're going to look. And like Stacy said, perhaps there were some text messages that could, out of context, be misinterpreted.
Sure.
And be suggestive and sort of feed into a narrative that the fiance had something to do with it when he didn't. And so certainly I can't fault him for taking legal maneuvers to protect himself. But common sense and lay people see that and say, hey, does he have something to hide? I'm not saying he does, but it's a question that has come up repeatedly.
Do innocent people get nailed? I mean, I know, I know the answer is duh, but let's just say he had nothing to do with any of this. Mm-hmm. She unalived herself, end of story.
Yeah.
Why does it feel like something is there?
Why would you walk yourself into something that if the perfect storm aligned itself, which it did, and that's what I think a lot of this case is a perfect storm, is you have the snowstorm is going on. They're not sending out the homicide detectives basically because of weather, because it's like, well, the people on the scene are saying it's a suicide. They're ignorantly just taking Sam's word that the door was, that the security guard was there, and that he saw him open the door, and that it was locked from the inside. So they're operating on that as fact incorrectly. And look, we can argue and say whether or not the door was latched from the inside or not. The official story still is it was. But the fact that they're just taking someone on their word is the insane part of this whole thing. At the end of the day, if there's anyone to blame, it's the cops. Because the cops fucked this thing up 7 ways to Tuesday. It's not how Sam acted. It's not how it's the cops fucked this thing up every which way.
That's true. My only point, and I rarely stick my face in on this thing, but my question is how fast did he process, hey, I might be in trouble here. And then, hey, I'm going to get my uncle involved.
That's weird.
It is weird. And I think most people would go, oh my God, my loved one is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be your mindset to kind of start thinking the process that, hey, this could be hung on me. I'm not sure that the average person in a situation like that would think that way and call Uncle so-and-so in his in a law office.
I agree. I don't think the average person would. He had family who was high, very powerful attorneys. I don't know that he was the average person in terms of legal thinking. If you were, I certainly wouldn't think that way anymore, but we've been doing this for a while, and I have a good thing in my mind, a good repertoire of how this shit works. And if something like that happened to me, I'd be fucking thinking that immediately if something happened that I had nothing to do with. I'd be mourning, but I'd also be like, shit, I got to protect myself because this could look really bad. The average person, no, not. But we don't know. We just don't know, what prism he's coming from, what education he has in that area, what mindset he has in that area to know, maybe I should be watching out for myself right now because this looks pretty shitty.
We all need an uncle who's a lawyer in our families, apparently, just in case something like this happens.
We don't know. He could have, and one may go, well, that's heartless, whatever. We're talking about emotions, but we're not talking about facts and how we would act. We don't know how he would act, and it could be somewhat explainable in a weird way. That's just the weird part about this whole damn case, is we don't know the answers. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Tony, on board with all that. And to your prior point, the cops totally botched this. I can't think of a death case, even when it seemed to be an apparent self-unaliving, where they didn't have crime scene investigation, at least go in and take a look. At least, let's assess this. Let's do this pursuant to protocol. And especially in this circumstance where it wasn't a clear, gunshot to the head and it's over or something. With the scene how it was and the knife being there, you bring in CSI, you have them do testing, you have them do DNA testing, fingerprint testing. There are an analysis that can be done as to the angle of the blade as it went in and things like that. My understanding is none of that was done. And in fact, then the apartment was professionally cleaned. And so if there was any evidence lingering around that CSI wasn't called in to look at, it was gone.
Yeah.
And again, all signed off on by the police. That's the weird part about this whole damn thing. It was all signed off on. So then we go in the road of, okay, was this signed off on out of ignorance? Out of, it's another case, let's just keep this moving. We already, we're basing our decisions on this, and we're not really thinking this clearly enough. Who's ever making these calls isn't qualified or shouldn't be making these calls. There's so many ways that it spirals off from there. What's the reason that the police allowed this to happen? They didn't consider it a crime scene. It appears it was just solely based on Sam's account. And look, Sam's not the one who makes the call of whether this is a crime scene or not. That's the police. Mm-hmm. So then you go, well, was someone greasing the police? Was someone saying, well, we're not going to do this because you're connected here or there? I mean, that's where we get down the conspiracy road. But again, other than there was a legally savvy uncle that came in and did play by the rules, I don't know what else there is.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think part of it could potentially be chalked up to police incompetence. You look at the fact that the police released the cell phone to the fiance's family, not the decedent's family, which is bizarre.
Weird.
But back in that time, the cell phones weren't necessarily the trove of evidence that they are now, or at least not everyone was aware of that in law enforcement. And so this could have just been sort of, they took Sam's word for it and they were ready to move on, and certainly some blunders were made.
I mean, is there any, and obviously information is what would in a perfect world, solve any of this. But obviously, people are already grounded in here's what I think happened, and that's where they're going to be. But if you were to get, I guess the question is there any world in which it makes sense for Sam to say a word about this today? To go, look, here's my story. Here's everything that happened, and it's assuming he'd had nothing to do with it. I know, like, here's what this does look shitty. Here's actually what happened, and line it out. And it may be very similar to what we already know in the police reports, if he's not, contradicting any of that as it is. But is there a world in which speaking up about this would be helpful to him if he's being persecuted for this, and obviously never been charged, or is it always going to be the best course of action, if you're his attorney, to say, just shut up. There's nothing you're going to say that's going to improve this whatsoever. And I know you had nothing to do with it, but your voice will not help anything. It will only fan the flames no matter what.
Yeah, Tony, I mean, as a human, we can all understand if a person is being wrongly accused, they want to clear the record, especially if this is like a nationally publicized case and, strangers are commenting on some misdeeds that they think you did. Of course, you would want to be vocal about setting the record straight. That being said, legally, I think it's absolutely not in his best legal interest to say anything, even if he is 100% innocent. There is such a social pressure and a push on social media and elsewhere to reopen this case, to try to find out what actually happened. And if you're on the government side, the prosecution side, the fiance is, like I said, usually a convenient first look. And there's no other suspects of which I'm aware that have been credibly developed. And so him saying something, he could misstate something. He could misremember something. This was years ago. Mm-hmm. There are just so many pitfalls to making that statement that it could do way more harm than good, even for a person who's 100% innocent.
So if you had a client that was Sam, and you saw these circumstances, and he said to you, this documentary's come out, I feel like I have to say something. What would you advise him to do at this point? I mean, other than keep your mouth shut.
I think there are two options. One is shut the fuck up. The second is you can release I would consider possibly a very brief written statement because a written statement can't be cross-examined. You can't be peppered with questions and be caught off guard.
Yeah.
And you could release sort of a very brief synopsis of what you believe happened. But that being said, there's still, he could put himself closer to the scene than he wanted by accident. He could, talk about prior issues that they were having in their relationship. Every relationship has that, but people are just looking for something to put their, hang their hat on and try to solve this case, outside of law enforcement and inside law enforcement, and that is just risky business.
And that's the thing with this. At the end of the day, I mean, he has made like little statements here and there, and every single time he does, it's like, oh, that horrible human being. How could he live like this? It's like, what if he didn't do it? What if he didn't do it? That's how he can live like that, because maybe he didn't do it.
Right.
That
And
might
Tony,
be
like
your
you said,
answer. But if it doesn't fit what people want it to be, but that's the thing. We have to get off of the box of what we want it to be to answer all of our questions, and more, well, what actually exists here. And that's the problem. We don't have that information. And the gatekeepers to that are not Sam. They're not his uncle. It's the city of Philadelphia. It's the court system. It's the law itself that is stopping this from getting any further investigation. And what is the reason for that? Is it some big conspiracy? The family has power and they're saying, don't investigate this because it's going to expose this and we don't want that exposed. That's a lot of people to be involved in that conspiracy. It really, in any conspiracy, it takes a lot of people, and that's why a lot of conspiracies aren't real, because they just don't work. It's too many people involved. Somebody's going to slip up and say at some point, yeah, they tried to grease me and say, don't say this. We're talking all these years now. I would think maybe somebody at this point would have come back and said that. The medical examiner has come back. The original medical examiner has come back and said, yeah, I would change my ruling if given the opportunity. He can't do that. He can't go back and change the ruling. But he says, based on the information that they have now, I would have ruled differently. It doesn't mean jack shit anymore. But it is what he's said. At least he would have said, what would it have been? It wouldn't have been homicide. It could have been homicide, or it could have been undetermined. Undetermined is the word I'm looking for. So it could have been any of those. But again, hindsight's 2020. You had a lot of people who were involved in this that they dug into in that documentary, and not one said, yeah, the police said, come over here, let's be real shady about this, and let's just tamper this down. A lot of them don't remember certain things. But again, you're talking a case that's how many years old? What were you talking about that day at your workplace on that 20 whatever year it was where this took place all those years ago in this specific corner of your office? Who's going to know that? And yes, it's a murder, but this is what they do day in and day out. So it's another day at the office for most of the people in question here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the age of the case presents so many problems, especially with that initial misstep by law enforcement of not having a crime scene investigation go there, and then the apartment's cleaned. Where's the evidence? You're not going to uncover any new evidence, at least in terms of physical forensic kind of stuff. Yeah. And then when it comes to witness recollection, my gosh, we're talking years and years. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast last week on Wednesday. It's to expect that kind of recollection and then to build a homicide case based on it is such a tall order.
What was your reaction to the actual report itself? The fact that it came back as suicide again were you surprised at the justifications as to what they used in this to double down on it again and essentially have lightning strike twice? What was your reaction to the overall report?
Yeah, I was a bit incredulous on parts of it. One thing I think everybody, the Greenbergs, the public, probably law enforcement, everybody wanted to know, hey, medical examiner, how can you explain how there are 10 or so stab wounds to the back of the neck and that this is still a person unaliving themselves. And there wasn't at least in my review, I was not satisfied with the explanation the new medical examiner gave. I thought she should focus on that if she was going to maintain the finding and say, hey, look, this is obviously, and really all she said is that it, kind of appears abnormal or something, but I think it still could be self-inflicted. There wasn't a ton of reasoning. She didn't cite studies and other cases to my knowledge on that specific issue. So I thought she was going to address that much more thoroughly, and she sort of glossed over what was really the most important piece of information in the autopsy.
And that's disturbing. I mean, there's a lot in here where it was just, well, it could have been from this. And that's your answer? Just, it could have been this, it could have been that. I mean, the knife wound that would have severed the spine, well, that could have happened during the autopsy. They could have been a little too rough, basically, with the body. And then that might have made the incision look a little bit deeper than it was. I get it, in theory, but that's a big if. There's a lot of big ifs.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was just sorry to interrupt you, but that's fine if they're not fine, but if they're going to speculate on something like that, what evidence do you have that happened? Did you talk to the doctors? Did you look into the medical records associated with that? What evidence do you have? Or are you just kind of guessing, hey, this could be it? That doesn't sound like science.
No, it doesn't.
And we're basing, everyone is basing opinions based on what was the lack thereof documentation of this case and the inaccuracies of the documentation of the case. And only in one report does it state that Sam was there with the guard. And that's what everybody goes, well, Sam says he was there with the security guard. One report says that. Who's to say they didn't screw up that report too? If we're going to go down one road and go, well, this is really screwed up and this is inaccurate, why would it not be? We can't just pick and choose what's convenient for our narrative to say, well, that's inaccurate over there, but it says this here, so this must be factual. There's a lot. I mean, it's a bungled thing everywhere. I don't trust any piece of this report.
Yeah, there's just so many holes. There's so many questions that it leaves open. Yeah, I was surprised by the new medical examiner's report, and especially when the affidavit from the original medical examiner said, "Hey, looking at this, I actually would change my finding to something other than, or I forget exactly how they worded it, but something other than self-inflicted, or I don't know exactly. But then the new medical examiner says, "No, you're right the first time, bro," and that's just a weird way that played out.
It is. And I mean, obviously, does this feel more like to you because there's two ways of looking at this. There's the emotional way where it's they're trying to cover up for a murder, and they don't want somebody to get in trouble that they don't want to get in trouble, or they're covering up their ass so they don't get sued further and they don't have more liability legally and financially. And when it comes to entities, they don't have emotions. They operate on finance. So if you are liable, if you were to say, we really fucked this up over here, your best interest is to continue producing reports if you're the one charged with producing the report of saying, no, we did everything right by the book. It's good. There's no incentive to have self-reflection and say this was incorrect. It's going to cost you a ton of money and jobs and credibility. Why would you do that? It's not, I mean, morally, yes, that's why you would do that. But again, you're talking about an entity. Entities don't have morals.
Yeah, anytime there's the risk of legal exposure, especially to a government entity, I've seen so often they will take the most untenable positions and then reaffirm them. They'll rubber stamp them down the line and say, nope, that government was right all along. Don't sue us. But I'm dealing with that with the city of Denver right now, where they're taking this outlandish position and they're just sticking to their guns, where everyone is like, what are you talking about? Let's have some honest analysis here. And I think some people are questioning just how much of that we had in the second report.
So, Eric, how much does public pressure how much of an influence can it have in a case like this? Because the world is looking at this case now. It's not just Philadelphia. It's not just the Greenberg family. It's people like all three of us, all four of us here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's public pressure now. So does that play a role in this case being cracked open again?
I think, Stacy, absolutely. And especially with the emergence of social media, the emergence of the internet, and just publicly accessible information about cases. 20 years ago, all three of us, we may never have heard about this. But
Right.
now, like, everybody and their brothers heard about it. And you look at the Menendez brothers case, that had been a cold case. Those people were sitting in prison, and no one had taken a look at them for years. Then there's this media piece, this documentary. Then there's a docudrama about it. And all of a sudden, the world is watching. That case is reopened. Now, they haven't been released yet, but it can absolutely result in new movement and motion in cases that haven't been touched for some time.
It's a journey that I'm sure they're going to continue to try to go down and continue to exhaust all legal options. I feel horrible for that family. They're just trying to get answers. And had there just been, at the end of the day, had there just been a proper investigation into this, looking into what actually happened, proper interviews with people, proper looking at digital devices. They should have looked at his. They should have looked at hers. They should have looked at everything. All of that should have been examined. Had we done that and had it all come out clear, Sam wouldn't have to be dealing with this now if he had absolutely nothing to do with it, because there'd be evidence that says, see, look, this is what this was. But because we went to the world of things being either covered up or just not investigated, and that's a lot of it, just not investigated, not looked at, you have all this space, all this time for all these different things that could have taken place between now and then. I don't know that there's going to be one person who knows what ultimately happened, and she's dead.
Yeah.
And I mean, unless she was murdered by someone, that person would know too, if they're alive. We still have cases today that pop up where it's like, oh, that wasn't who they thought it was. It was this drifter that showed up. Stranger things have happened. But there is evidence, I would say, in this case, as much as people don't like there is to be, that it could have been a suicide. There are a lot of hesitation wounds on her body that they're not necessarily indicative of someone attacking someone. There's not typically hesitation wounds on that sort of a death. And it is insanely rare that a woman or anyone would unalive themselves in this way, shape, or form. But there is the 0.0001%, and maybe we're looking at it.
I still want to know how she got the one in the back of her neck, though. I mean,
like this.
Yeah, I do a lot of stretching in the morning. I'm really flexible. I just, that trajectory.
I think I can manage it. I mean, you could. I mean, these are not impossible things to do. Why would you do it? Why would you choose it? That doesn't make any sense to anybody.
It just feels unlikely.
None of it feels likely. You're exactly right. None of it feels likely, but sometimes the unlikely is exactly what happened. And I don't know, maybe that is the answer in this case. None of us know the answer to that, but I think it's important that we look at all directions, because I feel like it's easy to jump on this one and go, this is what it is. I don't know. I just don't know. And because one cover-up is going on over here to protect one's ass for a horrible, horrible investigation, which anybody can admit was a botched, absolute shit investigation, that doesn't mean it's a cover-up to cover up for someone else's actions for a homicide. It could be 100% to botch, to cover up for not properly examining this thing. I don't know. And I think that's the thing that we have to say on this is we don't know. And it'd be lovely if authorities at this point could say, well, let's do what we can with what we have to look further into this. And if it still leads us into the unknown and we still have to say we don't know, then we don't know. But again, that would require opening themselves up to some liability. And I don't think they want to do that. So, messed up case.
Yeah, that's all I mean, before we got started, I had made a note card, and I won't pull it up because it messes with my camera, but, well, maybe I will. Todd, I'm going to do it. I'm going in. This is my response. every time we talk about this case.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening on the podcast, it says, are you fucking kidding me? It's how I feel every time we talk about it, because it just, none of it makes sense to me. We had this wonderful discussion just now, and I still am unsettled about it.
I am too. I have no answers. But that's where, again, it's like, let's look at all the angles. Look at all the, because it's easy to get wrapped up in the emotion of this, of what should be. But there's a lot of should that isn't in this.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.